And we're back.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the only podcast on the internet that has become Death, Destroyer of Worlds.
Oh my! Oh, a little Oppenheimer for you. A little Oppenheimer.
Well, I'm always at the cutting edge of the cultural zeitgeist. You know that about me.
Yeah. We're always at least 6 months behind on the current trends, which isn't bad.
Exactly. Wait until you hear my piquant thoughts on the Barbie movie.
The Barbie movie, yes,
absolutely,
yes.
yeah.
Oh,
yep.
right,
Mm-hmm.
right. So, in case you couldn't tell, we are doctors,
but not doctors.
And we are here on, I think, episode 12. Eventually, we're going to stop counting the episodes, but we'll see.
But that's it's still early enough that every new episode is a sweet little bon mot, a little gift that we give to the populace at large.
Oh, to the populace at large. All
absolutely
the millions and millions who tune in every week to hear
Indeed.
our intense thoughts and feelings. And it's been a while since we've been on. Dr. Armshaw's been sick, so that's fine.
Yep.
So we are doing this via Zoom, as we tend to do.
Exactly. This is us taking very seriously sort of physical security, because we don't want to spread respiratory illnesses. Because if you're in the same room with me and then I suddenly had to cough, you would reconsider your life choices. At that
it would be unpleasant.
Exactly.
It would be
Nobody would think that something good had happened. Is the point of that?
No, not at all. So, it's been quite a week and a half, week and a bit. And also, of course, the final disclaimer is that we both have jobs, we both have real lives. If you can tell by our view count, we don't have tons and tons of money coming in on ad revenue. So,
nope.
We're trying to keep it as normal or as regular as possible for you. So keep tuning in. Who knows? Some weeks you might even have, just a pre-recorded session just to keep it going. But
that's it. We're going to feed the algorithm gods with as much fresh meat as we can.
Well,
I don't know what fresh meat is in this context other than content. So
it's us. The fresh meat is us being thrown into the thresher of the algorithm gods, and unfortunately, we're not rage baiting yet. So we both have our integrity, but we have no money. So,
but tune in another year when hopefully we have lots of money and no integrity.
Ooh.
So
hey, listen, that's called an arc.
Exactly, right. It'll be like the Star Wars prequels, but it won't be terrible.
Oh, sure. Well, I never thought they were all terrible. the prequels. You know what?
The prequels.
I think the prequels.
I'm talking episodes 1 through 3, people.
I think that they get a bad rap, specifically episode 3. I liked episode 2 a lot. The Phantom Menace was ridiculous to me, even when I was younger, because I thought it was so ridiculous. They're trying to shoehorn in, kitty Darth Vader. I was so angry with that because he could have started when he was a teenager and it would have made so much more sense. I mean, this
that's true.
7-year-old kid falls in love with Padme Amidala, right?
Yeah, that was creepy.
It makes no sense. And then she goes along with it in episode 2. That's what's messed up. She goes along with it.
That's what raises questions about what she was doing in the first movie. Was this all just an elaborate? After all, there's a huge power dynamic shift going on here, right? She is a queen senator, and he is literally nobody. So I feel like, I don't know, man. Oh God,
I know.
Was episode 1 was the Phantom Menace grooming, Chris? Is that what the Phantom Menace was?
Oh no. That's how we just start our descent into.
You're right. So Lucasfilms, if you want us to keep quiet about this little secret, we got bank accounts.
We get sponsorships. We also, and I liked some of the last 3 movies as well. But I think it's just that big, trend of trying to sell things as opposed to tell the story.
Yeah. Well, we got to eat, man.
Well, we eat, but they eat well, and they don't need to consistently try to synergize. Like everybody's trying to do. We can't have a properly aged Anakin Skywalker to start because we need kids to want to be able to fly the starfighters. I'm like, no. When I was a kid,
right?
Yeah.
I was like 3 or 4 years old when I first saw a Star Wars movie, and I was hooked. And there were no children in A New Hope, to my
No.
knowledge.
Oh, the first
Like,
one I saw was Empire Strikes Back. Not in the
God,
theaters.
what a high. What a high to start off in. And you've been chasing that dragon ever since, haven't you, Chris?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anyways, enough waffle. We've
Yeah.
seen enough waffle. We have a lot to talk about and not a lot of time to get through it. So this
Yeah.
week we're going to be talking about, again, like we said last week, the shooting at FSU, a little bit of update on that. The death
Hmm.
of Pope Francis, which
Yeah, the
happened in the interim.
untimely death of Pope Francis, I would say.
Yes, I would also say the untimely death of
Mm.
Pope Francis. He may have been on the mend had he not been forced to meet someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Iberian power cut, which is happening today. We're
Yep.
recording on the
Quite big
28th
news.
of April, so it happened this morning and it's still ongoing. Trade wars, American trade wars, and America is clearly losing.
Yep.
Um, and so much more. So let's get started with the FSU um shooting. So, as you may remember, a few weeks ago,
Hmm.
a person walked onto FSU's campus outside of the University Union and started shooting, killed two people, injured, I believe, five.
Yeah.
Um, so FSU has been holding lots of, and for context, Patrick and I went to Florida State University.
Yeah.
It's obviously a little bit closer to us than it will be for other people. The story is obviously more focused on Tallahassee now, and it's not really getting huge coverage outside of the day when the shooting took place. But there was a 200-person protest march to the Capitol to, demand more gun laws, more gun safety. And
Mm.
unfortunately, the state capitol in Florida has been controlled by Republicans since time immemorial.
So
I
obviously, the protesters immediately were given a meeting with high-level representatives, senators, and the governor, and they got their way, right? That's
uh,
what happened, right?
Unfortunately, they're a bit too busy. But
Aw.
no, they went to the rotunda. They gave a speech, I believe, but and they were basically demanding that the legislators, both in the House and the Senate, pass stronger legislation. But it was a bit of a
Mhm.
dampener because over the past few years, the Republican-led legislature have been trying to peel away gun control laws that were implemented after the Parkland shooting,
Yeah.
in which was also in Florida.
Right. I mean, there's been a fair few. There's been a fair few mass
Yeah,
casualty shootings in Florida over the years. So,
and yeah, and it's sad because these things continue to happen, and Republicans in America tend to just pretend that they don't, and and just push it underneath the carpet because they can use their networks to change the narrative or change the story,
hmm.
because people don't want to hear about it. It's tough, and there are no easy answers, right?
Well,
There's
I
no.
mean, to be fair, there's a few answers that I think would be relatively easy, such as make it hard for people to purchase guns if they have not shown, the ability to use them responsibly. Like if you did have some kind of basic structure of, yeah, okay, no, you can have a license to have a gun, but you could do that once you've shown that you A, know how to use it, B, know when not to use it,
Yeah,
and C, are an otherwise responsible individual who isn't going to go around like, looking for a fight or trying to get famous or just murdering a bunch of people for fun. You know,
yeah. I
I
mean,
feel like, yeah, there,
it,
there
it's
could be ways to do that.
there could be ways to, I mean, and obviously the easiest one is to make it harder for people to be able to purchase weapons and harder for people to use them. For example, if people just think about a car.
Hmm.
Just because I'm of a certain age in a country, I can't, like here in London, I can't just
Hmm.
buy a car without a license, and it takes a very long time to get a license.
Hmm.
And then you have to be trained in using that car or driving a specific
Hmm.
kind of car, so you're only allowed to buy a certain kind of car. And all of this is common sense stuff, right? But obviously, that's not what the MAGA movement is about.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and
it is funny that you mentioned that because I'm going to take the other side of your argument there, Chris, and I will point out
okay,
that even with such restrictions on driving, we still do occasionally see people use cars to commit mass casualty, attacks,
that's
like the one
true.
that just happened recently in Canada.
Correct.
Yeah, during the
I think
ceremony,
it's Filipino.
yeah, Filipino community, basically. I think it's Lupa Lupa,
Yeah,
and I believe it's named after a war leader who basically defeated the Spanish in the 1600s. Obviously, did not prevent the colonization of the Philippine Islands, but nonetheless, the guy's become sort of a cultural hero,
like Boudica
apparently. Yeah, a little bit like. Okay, is it Boudica or
or
Boudicca?
Bodicea. I
Right?
prefer saying Boudica, but it could be
I, I,
Bodicea. I
I,
don't know.
you know what? Let's say the official policy on doctors, not doctors, is that it's pronounced Boudica.
How about you take one and I take the other? Because there's two of
Ooh.
us. And we'll swap indiscriminately. Um,
I think
with
that's a really good idea because I'm going to be terrible at remembering which side I have picked on that.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, good. So
So
enough
yeah.
enough Boudicca, and
Oh,
let's. I know, I know.
let's yeah, and so on to the next bit.
Yep.
One last bit. Sorry, one last bit about that.
Mm.
It's we are and we're coming up to graduation. I just happen to have my degree or my diploma up on the wall, and I looked
Oh,
at the date, and the date I believe is the 28th of April. So
yep.
they
Oh,
have to go
wow.
through so they have to go through like graduation either this weekend or next weekend or whatever.
And they
So
get
it's
to do that with the,
with all
yeah,
under the shadow of all of this. So yeah, so good luck to them, and I hope that
yep,
their graduation ceremonies aren't too poorly overshadowed because it is both a good day, but a day for remembrance as well. So,
yep.
anyways, moving on to the next person. Unfortunately, another death.
It is time for us to talk about His Holiness Il Papa.
Il Papa Pope Francis passed
Yep.
away on the Easter Monday.
Yeah, he made it through the most important day. I kind of feel like that's a bit of a win, you know?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you're a pope and you die on Easter, I feel like it's like showing up at a wedding and you're wearing white and you're not the bride, you know? It's just you just it's bad form. So I respect Pope Francis's decision to hold off as long as possible, which was until apparently he met JD Vance.
Well, yeah, he met JD Vance, I think, what, the day before, I think.
Yeah.
And JD Vance pulled a Liz Truss. So, in case you don't know, there was an American delegation who came
Hmm.
to the Vatican in the days before he died. And from what I understand, according to various online sources, the Pope and JD Vance, the American vice president, were not supposed to
Hmm.
meet. They weren't supposed
Hmm.
to interact with each other. The Vance was given somebody else, and I think maybe a lecture on being a good person.
Yeah, well, I mean, what happened was that apparently he was going to I think he was originally going to meet with the Pope, but then the Pope could not meet with him, possibly because the Pope was, busy dying, and so he was instead presented with, I think, one of the, the higher up cardinals basically in the church.
Yeah,
And you're right, and that cardinal then apparently his job was to meet JD Vance and sort of run him through the basics of being a human being. I don't know how well that took. I don't know how well JD Vance did with that lecture.
yeah,
Um,
no, doesn't sound like it took
yeah.
hold, but time will tell.
Yep. Yep. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Um,
So
but apparently, meeting with the cardinal was not enough for the man. He had to meet the Pope himself.
yes, that's right. Yes,
Yep.
that's right. So there's a
Yep.
famous picture, or I would rather say an infamous picture of JD Vance effectively forcing his way into a an audience with the Pope. And
Yeah.
I work with somebody who's Catholic, and he told me that JD Vance only converted last year. He's only been a
Yeah.
Catholic
JD
for a year.
Vance. Yeah. So I myself grew up in the Holy Mother Church,
The Universal
and
Church?
the one and only Universal Church. That, and for those of you who aren't getting the joke, Catholic literally means universal. That's the deal. Um, and to give you a sense of my bona fides on the subject, my father was an ex-Roman Catholic priest, actually.
Yeah, that's
So, like,
super interesting. I mean,
it's the thing. It's the thing. It happens.
yeah.
Anyway, long and the short of it being, so I was sort of raised with an interesting inside, somewhat jaundiced view of the church. My dad had been like very much one of the left-wing priests of the 1960s. That was sort of his whole deal. So after the reforms of Vatican II collapsed, that was when he decided, yeah, that's enough. It's
That's it for me. Thanks,
time to
guys.
bust at that point. So for me to sort of see JD Vance, this and a newcomer to the church, and that's lovely and that's great and good
Yeah,
for him.
yeah.
I can't help but think to myself, every convert that I have met tends to be, and there's a phrase for this, more Catholic than the Pope.
That you're the second person to say that.
Well, it's seriously, that is literally what that phrase is about. this whole idea that like people who convert, they mean it. They are very serious about it. But when someone says that someone else is more Catholic than the Pope, Chris, that is not a compliment.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't
Yeah.
sound like it's what you want to aim for. What you want to
No.
be as a Catholic is to be like, oh, no, no, no. You think the Pope is good? I'm better than him.
I'm a
I
million times as humble as thou art. So,
yeah. So yeah, so that one that happened. But
yeah.
it was a big deal because obviously, well, first off, Patrick, you and
Mhm.
I are both young enough yet not young enough to remember the one Pope,
Oh,
JP.
yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And the thing about John Paul II
yeah.
was that he was Pope for so long, kind of like Ronald Reagan was president when we were born, or when I was born, and
Hmm.
he was president for, what felt like a million years.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Pope John
Yeah.
Paul II didn't die until like what the not like the 2000s or the like 1999 or 2000.
I think it was close. It was around the millennium, actually. I'm going to look this up real quick
Yeah,
because we have the power of the
we
internet.
do have the power of the
Uh,
internet. But the point that I'm making is that um, it's just so interesting because these people, have been a lot have been around for so long.
yeah.
And when did he die?
2005.
2005.
The
Yeah,
2nd of April, 2005.
interesting.
I know, April's dangerous
April's
times for popes, apparently.
better than March for Roman emperors. So,
Indeed, indeed.
sorry, Roman dictators. I was just noticing that, like how many conclaves have we seen now? Because we've had after
Well,
John Paul
this is going
II,
to be, yeah. Like, well, after
we've
John, there was Cardinal Ratzinger,
Benedictus Cardinal Ratzinger,
who
yes,
was Pope Benedict. Yes, Pope Benedict,
the
who
16th.
amazingly looked like a Star Wars villain.
Yes,
Like
yes, he did.
you did not need to do a whole lot of photoshopping with the lightning
Zero,
hands
zero
to
percent.
to make him look like he would fit right in episode 57, you know. So yeah, he was not he was not my favorite pope. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna put my cards on the table here.
That's okay.
Uh yeah, Benedict's not a huge fan. So when he stepped down, and the Cardinals elected Francis, that was kind of mind blowing because Francis was, at least in Catholic terms, really left wing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
he was
That's what everybody was so
telling,
afraid of.
well, exactly right. And it's really funny that the cardinals who did this had been appointed by John Paul II and by Benedict. So it's a real indication that who becomes a cardinal, who appoints the cardinals, basically, does not necessarily determine who those cardinals are going to support in the next conclave.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like the thing is that they're still managing a massive organization,
Oh yeah,
which they need people to continue to participate and support, and they need the
yeah,
organization to grow.
yeah.
And it's clear that worldwide, at least in the Christian community, people aren't um people aren't flocking to the church or those churches, but alternatively, they seem to be flocking to like these mega churches in America and other things
Mm,
like that. So they do have to figure out how to bring people in. And it seemed like, Cardinal Francis was working, I'm sorry, Pope Francis was working very hard to expand the church and expand, its reach to more people, even if they were considered effectively sinners. Um,
I mean, the thing is, right? Like, it should not be a hard thing for the papacy to sort of point out that at least under Catholic, doctrine, we're all sinners. We're literally all sinners. Like
yeah,
every single person is a sinner, because we all have original sin. And good luck getting that one out. That
yeah,
that's pretty
exactly.
that's pretty stained in. So yeah, so then to say, okay, well, if indeed we are all sinners, and yet we are claiming that there's that God loves us and wants us in communion with them, then it shouldn't be that crazy to start saying, okay, well, let's talk about different types of sin. Let's talk about like what is what they in the business call a grace killing sin. What is more, venal, a little peccadillo, if you will. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think Francis was in his way trying to move more towards the direction of, you know, well, not saying homosexuality is not a sin, more placing it in the sense of like eating meat during Lent, you
Right,
know.
right.
Um, and
Easing
if
your
you,
way away from the stoning to the probably shouldn't
it,
do that.
well, exactly, right. And so, which you could argue is a progressive move. You could also argue is just 100% beside the point. And you know, and if you are a gay Catholic, like yeah,
Difficult
that's
times.
well, that's the thing.
Difficult
It's
times.
nice that it's moving in that direction, but like
Yeah.
clearly this can't be the end point because that's just it's a little bit absurd, especially given the fact that as my very Catholic parents pointed out to me as I was a child, at no point did Jesus talk about homosexuality. It was just not on his radar,
Ooh.
right?
Oh
So
no. Hang
yeah,
on. What about Leviticus? What about
that's
the rule?
Leviticus. That is okay. I'm sorry. Leviticus has a very. It's for those of you who are not super into this. Basically, Leviticus is like the set of rules for keeping kosher in a particular time and place. It is also a set of rules that includes stoning people to death if they mix the types of wool and cotton in their clothing.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's right.
polyester, you wear
Yeah.
polyester, you know, it's death for you.
Death to you. Yes.
You eat shrimp, death to you.
Death to you.
Yeah, so you know, and I mean,
The parts people ignore all the time.
well, exactly, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. So if you're going to take that stuff seriously, nobody's coming to your parties
Well,
because, like,
barely
you
shouldn't
know,
have them. Probably shouldn't even
yeah,
have parties, to be honest.
yeah.
Um,
I'm being a little bit mean to Leviticus, I will admit. And obviously, there are people who take this
well, people
seriously,
have used
and you know,
Leviticus to be mean to other people. So,
those people I have very little sympathy for.
yeah,
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 using godly things for what are pretty ungodly ends. I feel like
yeah.
that's not a great sin. You want to avoid that.
Exactly. So
Yeah,
so so here we are, and that means we're on the verge of another conclave where we're going to find out if
yeah,
the direction of the Catholic Church and the billion or so people who are part of the Catholic faith, the conclave starts next Wednesday, and we'll see who eventually comes out. In the
yeah.
interim, I'd recommend that you watch either the movie Conclave, which I watched last
I,
weekend,
I
or
still
you
haven't
could
seen
watch
it. Is it good? Is it
it's
worth watching?
it's fantastic. It's probably
Yeah,
worth buying. And
dude.
The Two Popes, which is a
Okay.
fantastic movie about Ratzinger and Bergoglio.
Oh, who plays Bergoglio?
Bergoglio is played by Jonathan Price.
Yes, good. That's what I was hoping you were going to say because, like, seriously, he is clearly the movie star version of Pope Francis.
Oh yeah, I
Like,
mean, and it is a fantastic movie. I feel like they must have filmed it in the Sistine Chapel or in the Vatican, but it's probably somewhere in Rome. But it just shows it's really it's a lot better for it comes out better for Pope Francis than it does for Benedictus. But
I think that was pretty much baked into the premise, though. So you
well,
know,
yeah, I mean, it's about one
yeah.
person leaving and another person staying, and you take from
And one
take
of
from
those
that
people
what you
used to
will.
be in the Hitler Youth, so
And
you
one of
know,
those people used to be the Hitler Youth. You can figure out
yeah.
which one. You go online. We're not going to put we'll put a description in a comment in the descriptions, or you comment in the descriptions who was in the Hitler
Yep,
Youth. Ratzinger
exactly.
Abergoglio. The
Place your bets now,
answer
people.
will surprise you. Uh,
Chris, I think that it may be going too far to say that that will be the case.
yeah. All right. Moving on. Something that's been happening today. Power cut
Yeah.
in across the Iberian Peninsula. What's that
Yes.
about? I
And
mean, go ahead. Sorry.
oh, no, no. I mean, so okay. You have followed this story a bit more closely than I have in the sense that you have followed it at all, and I am just catching up now, basically.
Well,
Um,
you've been at work today, so that's difficult for you to catch up on this because it's been um, quite a it's been quite a weekend. I'm sorry, quite a day for people in Spain and Portugal. So short
yeah.
version is as follows: around 11:30 this morning or earlier, power across Spain and Portugal just stopped. It went down across the two countries, and all electricity basically just cut,
So,
unless they had a power generator.
my
That
God.
was it.
So, just to clarify, when you say
Yeah.
the power went out in Spain and Portugal, you're not saying that there's a town on the border with Spain and Portugal where the power went out and like the surrounding area had a bit of an outage. What you're saying is that this is kind of peninsular wide.
It
Am I
is,
reading this correctly?
you are correct. It is Spain and Portugal, the countries, are
I
out
have,
of power.
Chris, I have never even heard of the power going out in a country. A
Yes,
country.
yes,
That alone is an outstanding idea. Unless that country is Liechtenstein,
yeah.
then that already is something that blows my mind. But now you're giving me two countries at once.
Two large countries, and I mean, sure, an island
Yeah.
might lose power because they had hit by a hurricane.
Right.
And so obviously, when I came into work this morning, my staffer, she was like, "Have you heard about this? Do you think it was the Russians?" And that then I
That's
figured out what was going on, and I
yeah.
and so let's call that right now. The Portuguese authorities do not believe that it is a terrorist attack, nor do they believe that it is any kind of a cyber attack. What they've described as something incredibly complicated, but they have said that, quote, it is a rare atmospheric phenomenon that happened in Spain. And they have said, I'm going to read what they said. Due to extreme temperature variations in the interior of Spain, there were anomalous oscillations in the very high voltage lines, a phenomenon known as induced atmospheric vibration. These oscillations cause synchronization failures between the electrical systems, leading to successive disturbances across the interconnected European network. So basically, they're saying that something happened in the air around these the giant electrical lines that you see everywhere that basically
Mhm,
transport electricity from power generation stations into a substation into your house, right?
mhm.
The things that you see in America that you're not supposed to live under, but people live near. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, pretty much.
and
Yeah.
so something's happened in the air to disrupt the transmission of that electricity along those wires. And they're saying it could take a couple of days for it to be fixed, which, in my
Wow.
opinion, probably means that they have to wait for the weather to change because they might not be able to fix it. It might just be something with the weather. And apparently, it's just something that's just happened in Spain, maybe because of temperature, maybe not because of temperature. Who
Right.
knows? But if this is related to climate change, um, I'm not putting on my conspiracy hat here. I'm putting on like science hat. This is because of climate change and things getting
Mhm.
hotter faster. This could happen
Right.
across Iberia, the Iberian Peninsula, more often than maybe other places.
I mean, the Iberian Peninsula has been dealing with quite a bit in the way of climate change over the last 2 decades.
That's
You know,
right.
I remember when I was growing up, right, in high school, in Spanish class. It's terrible, terrible Spanish class, but that's neither here nor there.
No,
In
it's
the
not.
book, they talked about how, like, oh, in Spain and whatnot, it's really hot during the summer, but it's, quite cold during the winter, but it's really temperate at other times. And, because it got all the way up to like 85 degrees. And
That's
as someone
85 degrees Fahrenheit, by the way.
85 degrees Fahrenheit. And as someone growing up in South Florida, I was just like, ha 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 ha,
Oh yeah.
those poor Spaniards know nothing of heat. Ha ha. And then recently, just a few years ago, I, went down to Portugal basically. I was doing for a vacation, go to Porto, where it's, on
Right.
the sea and there's cliffs and it's temperate. And the day before I landed, it was 40 degrees Celsius.
Which is a little bit
Exactly.
higher than 87 degrees
Quite a bit. So yeah,
Fahrenheit.
I sort of take that for me. That's sort of like the emblematic moment for me of realizing, oh, these are very different climates to what I had been hearing about back in the early '90s.
Yeah.
There has definitely been some change in the climate, you could say.
Yeah, you
So
see, the climate has apparently changed, and we have effectively from the mid 2000s been pretending like it hasn't, and it isn't changing.
yeah,
I have friends who live both in Spain and Portugal. I don't know if the power is on back in Spain or back in some Spanish cities or some Portuguese cities, but it doesn't look like it is. So, and this is the thing that you don't really
oof,
realize, right?
hmm
So they're talking about what happens now? There are people who live in apartment buildings that are 10, 20, 30 stories, right? There are people
oh,
who were in elevators or lifts when the power went out. There are people on trains when the power went out, and they had to
yep,
stop the trains and they had to walk back to the station wherever that
yep,
train was.
yep,
And I've been on some of those trains in Portugal. It is not a short journey between towns,
no, no,
and you're not
and
prepared for this.
the thing is, right? This is happening in April. Can you imagine if this had happened in like July,
That's exactly what I said earlier today.
right? Well, that's the
Yeah.
thing with the kind of heat that you could be dealing with. I mean, assuming that what caused it this time was extreme changes in the weather, right? Apparently,
Or
this,
an
right,
aberration, a phenomena has happened, right? And
right.
we're trying. I don't, well, the problem sure more will come out in in a few days as about
Mhm.
what this means.
Right. So obviously, at the moment, we're just speculating randomly, wildly, and utterly irresponsibly, as is our rights as Americans.
Naturally.
Yeah. But like, if this is the kind of aberration that can happen, and if it were to happen during the Spanish summer, if it were to happen at a time where
Or
it's over
Portuguese
100
summer.
degrees Fahrenheit, exactly, where we're over 40 degrees Celsius, and that's out for days, that is really very, very dangerous.
That's
Um,
deadly. It's deadly because that's what
yeah,
I was saying. Like, if this had happened in July or August, and you don't have any air conditioning,
yeah,
that's it. I mean, there are some buildings that are probably designed to handle, getting air through a building and try to keep things cool. That's
right.
not going to be everywhere. That's not going to
Well,
be everywhere.
that is definitely true. And the problem is it's going to be the more modern buildings in particular that are going to be more susceptible to that. Because
Yeah,
of course, in order to build a flat or a house that is sort of resistant against heat, you want things like big windows, with obviously blinds and whatnot, but you want high
yeah,
ceilings. It's relatively expensive to make that. Whereas if you could just climate control the inside of the building
yeah.
with air conditioning, well, then you don't need the high ceilings. Then you don't
That's
need
right.
to worry about like, sort of glazing on the outside to reflect heat. And so it would strike me that it would be potentially cheaper for them to have built apartments that really rely on having electricity as a thing that keeps you alive.
It's because we're in the 20th century and we
Yeah,
assume that electricity is always going to be there. Something else to think about.
yeah.
How do you buy things?
And this is where all the cash people are just going to be like, I told you, I knew this day was coming. Screw you and your debit cards. I have been keeping my dollar coins for just such an occasion.
Yeah, no, this is I think going to be a huge awakening. And to be fair, I'm sorry, Portugal and Spain, I will speak for Portugal.
Hmm.
It's still an economy that still uses a lot of cash. So that's a plus.
Yeah.
People will most likely have cash on them, but even getting to the ATMs to get out cash, right?
Oh
If
yeah.
those ATMs work,
Which they won't
um,
because they are electronic.
yeah, unless there's a separate secondary power source, because airports are
That's true.
fine.
If there's a generator.
Airports are fine. Hospitals are being run on generators.
Hmm.
Airports are delayed, but not all shut down. So it isn't like a
Hmm.
complete societal collapse, but it is,
Yeah.
people were driving on the street. So this happened in the middle of the morning. So people were out on the streets driving, and then the streetlights just cut out, and people are just trying to manage crossing streets and driving without without any
Yeah.
help. And we have no idea how things are going. People are obviously making contact because obviously 4G and 5G technology is a radio technology.
Hmm.
Um, so as long as your phones are charged, you have a battery pack ready to go, which I make sure mine are charged now. So yeah, but
Yeah.
I think it's a precursor, at least a good 2 minute warning to make sure that, are you prepared for it's kind of like being hurricane prepared.
It is a little bit, I was about to say, this sounds an awful lot like, growing up in South Florida, the idea is that you want to make sure that you have, some jugs of water ready to go if there
Yeah.
is a hurricane. If you know a hurricane's coming, one of the first things you do is you fill the bathtub.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably want to clean the bathtub first,
Yeah.
but you fill the bathtub so you have a water supply if it all goes tits up.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, and we may need to do that, but with huge batteries. We just need to have huge batteries and huge piles of water, and probably not keep them too close together. But
Yeah.
yeah, this
But
this may be part of it.
I also think that it's, because growing up as an American, you're used to more extreme weather. When I moved here,
Hmm.
like a thunderstorm's a big deal here, right? And
That's
I
true, and
grew
that's
up in
adorable, Britain.
I know, but we've had hurricanes, tornadoes. I grew up in the Midwest, so we had
Hmm.
tornadoes. Down south in Florida, you'll have hurricanes. There are
Absolutely.
forest fires, which of
Yeah.
course Spain and Portugal do have forest fires. So they're on that side. They're used to that. But you
Mm.
know, it's very rare to have a situation where kind of modern technology is just down for a couple of days. Unlike a hurricane where it's like, well, it's August, so between now and
Yep.
November, I guess.
Yeah, there's
Um,
a good chance that the power is going out. And to be fair, the power goes out in America pretty frequently.
oh yeah,
Like,
any thunderstorm. I mean, how many times
yep,
power cuts when I was growing up,
right,
just because
exactly. So,
there's a bad storm, and then it'll come
yeah,
back on in a couple hours if you're lucky.
that's the thing. Like,
Anyway,
there have
yeah,
been very few times when it's gone out for days at a time, and usually only because of a big hurricane. So this is, you're right. This I think is a real indication that things are changing.
things are changing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, good luck to the people of Spain and Portugal. Hopefully, in
Yep.
a few next few days, this is all gonna blow over, pass over, and then we can figure out basically how to make all of our systems more resilient because it's not
Yeah.
just going to be them, it's going to be all of us.
Exactly.
So, with that, let's take a brief break, and then we're going to get on to our chosen topic for this edition, the
Hmm.
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Woo!
All right, we'll be right
That
back.
that's the official sound that Dunning-Kruger makes, by the way.
That explains so much. All right, we'll be right back. And we're back.
We're back from that fantastic commercial break. I hope you listened to many commercials that weren't running on this program.
No, no,
Um,
no. I'm
yeah.
sure at some point there will be ads in that space.
One day, one
One
day
day
we will
for
sell out, and it's gonna be glorious.
it's going to be glorious. Ads for
Yeah,
countries that we would never travel to.
absolutely. I can't wait for our first ad to come through from the North Korean Tourism Board.
Yeah, sure. One cannot wait for that. So,
Visit
okay,
Pyongyang, and only the bits of Pyongyang we allow you to see.
visit Pyongyang. Visit Pyongyang with our guide, who will never leave you by their side. You will never leave your side,
You'll never be
ever.
alone in North Korea.
You'll never
So,
be alone. You feeling alone? Come to North Korea. We will follow you everywhere.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay. So, I put my there it is. Okay. So, how do you want to do this? All right. So
Well,
next up,
yeah.
we last week after our session, we were discussing in the pub. Were we in the pub? Must have
I
been in
think
the
we were
pub.
in the pub.
Yes.
We were in the pub. Yeah.
About an idea that I had regarding a cognitive bias thing,
Hmm.
which is effectively, and I think it connects in well with how things are going in the world today and how things have gone in the past. And the name of that effect is called the Dunning-Kruger effect. So, Patrick, why don't you take us through what it is?
I would be delighted. So, the Dunning-Kruger effect is named after two social scientists named Dunning and Kruger.
No
You will be
way.
surprised here. I know. We're a font of information here. But so in 1999, they wrote a paper, and that paper was called Unskilled and Unaware of It: How Difficulties in Recognizing One's Own Incompetence Lead to Inflated Self-Assessments, which is just, as someone who went through a political science doctoral program, and and has read quite a few very very dry studies that nonetheless made very important points. I really like that one. That's like good academic speak. That's like
Yes.
proper, yeah. You always start off with some kind of phrase, and then you got the colon, and then you've got the subtitle. And I feel like they really just nailed it here. It's right. It's almost funny without being jokey. And that's, I got to say, I want to give them props. Some good writing. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
I mean, it's directed to the point, but also we know exactly what we're in for.
Well, exactly, exactly. Also, it does get to talk about the phrase one's own incompetence, which is just, for me, that's like one of the highlights things from
That
this
will
whole thing,
come, that will be important later.
Yeah.
So how does it work? What does it mean?
All
What
right.
is the Dunning-Kruger effect? Because as I was very surprised, not everybody is aware of this.
Really, I thought that this had made the rounds on the internet enough that, like, it had percolated its way down to the most reclusive gamer. But apparently, and I thought I was the most reclusive gamer, but
Oh, there
apparently
are
not.
far more
So,
reclusive gamers than
oh,
you.
well, there you go, there you go, and that just shows the limits of one's own knowledge, which is really what
Precisely.
the Dunning-Kruger effect is about. So, in this paper, these social scientists basically had four studies where they had participants engage in tests. These were tests on humor, grammar, and logic. Now, the point of it wasn't just to see, oh, how do people do in these tests? That's fun and all, but that's not really the point. Instead, the idea was that they had people take these tests. They scored these people on how well they did compared to everybody else, using what are known as percentiles. For percentiles, for those of you who are not up on the lingo, this is the percentage of the population that you are ahead of. So if you
Right.
take an exam and you score in the 90th percentile, that means you did better than 90% of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically the deal. Um, so they have people take the test. They run the statistics to get their percentiles on how well they did. But before they tell people what they did, they also ask them, "How well do you think you did? Which percentile are you? Where in the standard distribution would you fall?" Right?
Ooh, standard distribution.
Um,
Love a good standard distribution.
well, exactly, right? I mean, what are we in life without a proper standard distribution, Chris? You
Well,
know, a
very
bunch
good
of lousy
question.
poissons? Damn. But
Huge.
so, yeah, exactly. But so when they did this, they found a very interesting finding, which is that the people who were top of the pops, people who were really good at these tests, consistently placed themselves around the middle.
Right.
The people who were in the middle of the distribution, not so great, but not so bad, perfectly reasonable, normal, tended to place themselves around the middle.
Yeah.
And the people who were terrible at these games, just really awful,
Yeah.
consistently placed themselves near the top.
What?
I know. And this is weird, right? This cries out for an explanation.
It's an
Um,
inverse. It's the opposite of what you think would happen.
well, that's the thing, right? You would think that if you're really just shit at something, at some point you're gonna be like, God, I'm really bad at this. That
I
sucks.
shouldn't do it
Oh,
anymore.
right. Or I should get better, or maybe I should care less because maybe I got other things to do in my life. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
No one knows everything. And there's lots of people who know a lot about one thing and very little about anything else. You know,
Right.
so yeah, it's not crazy that someone would be bad at one of these exams. The weird thing is that you'd be bad at the exam and not know it.
Yeah.
Like, because I think we've all been in a position, right, where we've taken a test in school, and we think to ourselves after, oh, man, I did really well. I did it. I just knew every answer. I felt so good about this one, right? And
Yeah.
then you get the score back, and it's like, nah, I actually got a D. And you're like,
That's right.
damn, what the heck? I am what? How? But the thing, and it's a crazy thing, right? And ultimately, this is kind of Dunning-Kruger's explanation for what's going on. Is this? There are certain people who know so little about a topic that they fundamentally do not know, number one, the things that they don't know. But
Right.
number two, the fact that they don't know those things.
Right.
They do not know the things that they don't know, and they don't know that they don't know them. They don't
Correct.
know that there are things to know outside of what they know. And so fundamentally, what that means then is that someone would be in a position of knowing everything that they do know and believing that that's all there is to know,
Yes.
and therefore believing they know everything.
Correct.
And so, yeah. And there's been a lot of internet speak to sort of describe how this works. Chris, you brought up one of my favorite ways of describing that moment of just a little bit of knowledge, but nowhere near enough, and way too much confidence. What do they call that, Chris?
Oh, the peak of ignorance.
The peak of Mount Ignorance.
The
Exactly. It's
peak of
just
Mount Ignorance. Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah, because if
Yeah.
you think about it, so the way that they described it, I don't know if you were going to talk about this. I don't want to step on your
Mm.
toes here, but the
No,
way
go
they
ahead,
did the
please.
way they show it is that they drew a graph,
Hmm.
and on the y and x axis, I don't remember what the rates were on
Uh,
the y and
I
x
think
axis.
the x-axis was the amount of knowledge or skill in the particular subject. The
Yeah,
y-axis was how confident people felt in their
confidence.
abilities.
That's exactly it. So as you went up the oh yeah, because math is not my forte.
Hmm.
The y, that's the
Hmm.
y-axis. As you went
Yeah.
up
Why?
as you went up the
Yep. Wise up and
y-axis,
down.
right?
Hmm.
Basically, imagine that you start at zero knowledge and zero
Hmm.
confidence on a subject, and
Very
then
reasonable.
and then you decide I'm going to become an expert on this subject, and you start opening up books, right? Or maybe you open up a
Mhm.
beginner's guide or dummy's guide to X, right?
You do your own research.
You do your own research. Do you see where
Hmm.
we're going here? You say people who start doing their own research and then they start shooting up in a very relatively short amount of time up Mount Ignorance.
Hmm.
And as you get higher, higher, and higher up, you feel that you're getting more and more information, and you're starting to apply it to things that you know, and and you're going to get some of these answers right
Hmm.
because you know the basics, and then you're going
Yeah.
to get to the peak of Mount Ignorance, and then that's the turning point. Some people never leave the peak, while
Yep.
others continue to learn and realize that, oh, I'm only scratched the surface on
Yep.
what I know. So think of it like going fishing. And you
Hmm.
decided that I love to fish, and I'm slowly learning how to fish. I'm slowly learning how to fish. And I've caught a few
Hmm.
fish and slowly learning how to fish. But then one day you want to go ice fishing. And you think to
Hmm.
yourself, I know how to fish, therefore I know how to ice fish. So I've seen somebody online drill a hole into the ice. That's fine. I'll get out a
Hmm.
drill and I'll drill the hole. And then you fall through the ice because you didn't realize that the ice was too thin. It's the wrong time of year. This is the wrong
Hmm.
place to be doing it. All sorts of things that you should have known if you had talked or spent more time learning. And that learning time is the steep downward side of that peak of ignorance. It is an
As your
avalanche
confidence collapses, as you realize, oh God, there's so much I simply don't know.
that I simply don't know, right?
Yep.
And in real life or in nature, that collapse is just death. Right? But because we're humans, we have books and the internet and teachers and professors and higher education and secondary education and primary
Yeah.
education. And
Hmm.
then over time, you go from that valley of just despair because you don't know anything, and you slowly raise on to what I believe they call like the plateau of okayness.
Yeah. Which it's an excellent plateau. It's okay. You know what I'm saying?
You know what you know. You know there's more to learn because
Hmm.
ultimately there's no way you can learn everything about everything.
Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't know everything about everything. He doesn't know everything about the stars. He knows more than Patrick and I will ever know. He's
Oh
forgotten
God,
more than we'll
absolutely.
ever learn. But
Hmm.
he can't tell me what, planets are rotating around Antares or Vega or, even Alpha Centauri. Maybe Alpha Centauri because we can see it. But like, or if there are people or life on various planets, he can't
Right.
tell me
What
that
exactly is the nature of the interior of a black hole? Is there
exactly.
an interior of a black hole? Like, yeah. So I mean, like there are all these there are huge questions out there about, about space, which weirdly is actually one of the things we probably know more about than many other topics. Like we
Yeah.
know more about the universe and its origins than we know about what the hell is going on in the oceans, basically.
Oh yeah,
Like,
there's more footprints on the face of the moon than there are on the seas of the ocean,
well,
on the
there you
bottom
go.
of the seas.
Yeah.
So the reason that I brought this up is because I was thinking about this graph and the peak of Mount Ignorance in the valley, and the fact that Patrick and I both had to go through that
Hmm.
to get our doctorates. We had to write a dissertation. We had to both go through obviously the basic education system and then
Hmm.
choose our very specific sliver. Dr. Lee Metcalf, who is from the Florida State
Hmm.
University, basically tried to explain that, you get you get your basic education and you kind of everybody kind of knows the same thing, and then you get
Hmm.
your higher education, you get your bachelor's degree, and then you get a master's degree, and instead of expanding your circle wider, it's just like a small sliver of your circle going further out, and
That's a yeah, that's a
and
nice way
further,
of putting that.
and getting a doctorate is just even furthering out that sliver because I don't know, I can't build a car with my bare hands, right? But
Yep.
therefore I still have huge swaths of ignorance. So what we were thinking of are people like like the people in the Trump administration and some people here in the UK.
Mm.
So we're gonna spin this together here. I want to talk about trade policy in America
Ooh,
right
do you
now.
think that that might connect back in with Dunning-Kruger, for
It
instance, like you
might
just
connect
saying?
in the Dunning-Kruger because
Huh.
if you think about somebody who, like somebody on Trump's team, potentially Peter Navarro, who
Mm.
believes that tariffs are going to solve for all issues with the American economy. We can replace all taxes with tariffs because it was done in the 18 blanks, right?
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of people who agree with that because they climbed Mount Ignorance and they got to the very top and they said, I know everything I need to know about the subject, like you said before, Patrick.
Hmm.
I know
Hmm.
all there is to know about this. Therefore, we can set our trade policy to this idea. And
Yep.
for the past probably over 100 years now, we know it's a bad idea. And there are constant people telling you, but they're in boring, long papers with less engaging titles than the one that Patrick has told us.
Well,
So,
exactly. And
and
it's actually I've heard recently a very good explanation of the thinking behind the shift away from using tariffs as the main form of taxation in the United States
mhm,
and towards the imposition of an income tax.
right.
And this was very much the idea. Like, if you're going to get rid of having huge freaking tariffs on international trade, the money's got to come from somewhere. The government has to be able to raise taxes.
Right.
So the imposition of an income tax, which, for the record, took passing a constitutional amendment
Yes,
in the
that's right.
1910s to make that happen. That is how difficult it was to get this thing passed, which suggests that the people at the time saw it as that important to get it done. Now, why were they so desperate to impose an income tax and avoid using tariffs to fund the government? Why would not just the Congress vote in favor of it by a two-thirds majority, but also three-fourths of the states' legislatures vote for it? Why would they do such a thing, right?
I don't know.
Well, the answer is this, actually, right? If all of your taxation is coming in through tariffs, that means that if trade falls for some reason,
Oh,
then you lose your income and the
right,
government can't pay its bills.
right.
And, which is potentially a problem, right? Especially if you're in a circumstance where, say, you think you might soon have reason to believe trade is going to collapse. Like maybe you're in a war.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Like literally any time you're in a war and global trade collapses with you, then all of a sudden the government has no money with which to fight said war, which means that the United States would be weak at the worst possible moments.
Yeah.
It is not surprising then to understand that, yeah, when was it that we got the income tax and shifted away from tariff-based financing?
Was it
As
19?
is right before World War One.
Yeah, like 1913, 19.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think 1913 when they had to when it finally was
When
brought in.
everyone knew how interconnected the world had become, when everyone knew there's probably going to be a big war coming, and we don't want to be caught flat-footed and be completely indefensible at when that breaks out. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so that's the point though. It's like so this is basic information, this is basic knowledge, and this
Mm.
is why people don't impose I'm sorry, crushing tariffs upon your trading partners because
Then they'll
it
stop trading with you,
then they'll
and then
stop
there's no
trading.
tariffs to raise.
Then
Like,
there's no money to be gained from the tariffs because they will stop trading with you and they will engage in a tariff war. And so what's happened with this huge genius plan
hmm
of creating these huge tariff walls with America's biggest trading partner must be China, because I mean, Walmart, Target, the rest of them wouldn't exist without it.
mm, yeah.
So because people don't also, when you initiate a trade war, you need to understand that it takes time for the goods to get from the place where they're made to your shelves.
Oh,
So
you mean they don't just teleport, Chris?
yeah, much like people, you can't just
Huh?
magic your way into
Huh?
to work or magic your way to the bar or magic your way to the pool or magic you have to get there. And there sometimes are barriers between you and where you're getting to. So like let's take a Nintendo Switch 2 or an iPod or seeds
Yeah.
or cars or computers, right? They
hmm
have to be made somewhere, and that
hmm
typically right now is China or Vietnam or somewhere. They take
hmm
and then they put it on a boat, and
hmm
before they put it on the boat, they have to be ordered by somebody in
hmm
America. And then when they put that on the boat, they don't put it on the boat to be bought today. They put it on the boat to be bought in 6 weeks or six
Mm.
months time, right?
Yeah.
You
Well,
could
it takes time for the boat to get across the
the
Pacific
Pacific
Ocean,
Ocean, yeah,
which is quite large, as
it's
I
a
understand
big
it.
ocean.
It's Yeah, it's pretty big. It's
It
pretty
it
big.
takes some time for it to get there because we don't put everything on a plane. So
hmm
so you're shipping over cars and electronics and anything you buy on Amazon basically.
hmm
And that takes several weeks. Oops, that takes several weeks to get to America. And then when it gets to America, they have to wait for a spot at the port. And then when they finally get to the port of Los
hmm
Angeles or the port of Portland or the port of somewhere else, they then have then they basically can put it onto a train or a truck and get it
Yep.
to you wherever your Best Buy is or wherever your shops are. And the same
Yep.
thing happens in the United Kingdom. You have if you
Hmm.
want to get lettuce from Spain or you want to get wine from France or meat from Bavaria, they got to put it on a truck. The truck's got to go through Calais or and then go
Hmm.
into the United Kingdom and vice versa. But when you start imposing tariffs willy-nilly and just, whenever you feel like it,
Hmm.
they just stop doing it because it's no longer affordable for them to do it. And
Yep.
what I'm reading now, um, across several people online now is that because the tariffs have taken effect for China, and I think it's
Hmm.
145% tariffs or something.
148%, Chris, I think
So
you'll
sorry.
find.
I'm so sorry that I got that wrong.
I mean, to be
100
fair, wait 5 minutes. Maybe it'll go down or up, or who knows what could happen.
But the problem is that it doesn't matter if it goes down or it goes up in the next 4 or 5 days because the initial effects are about to apparently hit American shelves.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, apparently the next 2 to 3 weeks, I understand, is when we should start expecting to see some real shortages hitting at Walmart's. The empty shelves problem is coming for America. And you're right. The problem here is that it's not like a tap you can turn it on and off again, right?
right.
This is a situation much more like stopping a freight train
Yeah.
and then trying to get it going again.
Yeah.
It takes just a huge amount of energy to do that. Um, and if I can sort of piggyback onto your larger point of, this has caused a huge amount of disruption. And simply saying, okay, well, even if we do get rid of the tariffs, that's not going to stop this problem from having happened and coming for us in the near future.
Yeah.
It's also the fact that the instability that this has created means even if they do get rid of the tariffs, well, who's to say they can't put them back in again?
Right.
Which
Confidence.
means, well, that's the thing. If you are going to be someone selling to the United States and you don't know what the prices you can sell for, then you don't know if you're going to make any profits. So that's just a huge risk. And maybe you don't sell stuff to America. And I know that a lot of sort of right-wing protectionists are saying to themselves, yeah, that's what we want. We want
Right.
those foreigners to stop selling us goods and services in exchange for money because we think trade is a bad thing, apparently.
Trade. They
Um,
don't think trade is a bad thing. They think that
Donald Trump
trade.
literally said trade is bad.
Never
Like,
mind. I retract what I said. I've Dunning-Krugered myself.
but no, I think that was just you making the horrible assumption that these are reasonable people, and I think you'll find that that assumption
That is a lie.
does not bear testing.
Y-
Um,
Yeah.
but
Sorry, just to jump in real
yeah,
quick.
no, go
So
ahead.
like trade, right? So it's not that they believe, okay, so they believe that trade is bad, but they also believe that the absence of international trade will create quote unquote American jobs. And I want to bring Brexit
Yes.
in for a second
Hmm.
because Brexit is another form, in a way, I say half of Brexit, specifically the trade half is the Dunning-Kruger, right?
I absolutely agree on this.
And it's specifically because I remember reading tweets from Tory MPs saying,
Hmm.
this is great. We're gonna be able to do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, it takes time to build a port, and there aren't enough ports here. And
Yep.
the ships can just go around the United Kingdom and go to Ireland to ship within the EU, right?
Yep.
The stuff is already there. You have to create it. And also, we don't grow oranges here. We don't grow watermelon. It's stuff that I still see on the shops today because there are trade deals, but they're not nearly
Yep.
as favorable as when you're in the EU because they
Hmm.
climbed up to the top of Mount Ignorance and they just stayed there. They refused to go back down. They said they must
Yep.
have only read things that support their side.
Well, that's the thing, because if you read things that don't support your side, Chris, then that might mean that you don't know everything, and then you'd have to work.
Well,
And who wants to do that?
you'd have to figure out how to maintain your position in the face of brutal reality. Which,
Yeah.
sometimes that's fine if you know that, the prevailing thought is wrong, but you have to be able to prove that. And so far, we have not seen the proof of,
Yeah.
this anti-trade theory,
Well, it's
either here or in the United States.
I mean, I would actually go so far as to say we've seen tons of proof. It's just all in the opposite direction.
Yeah,
So like the problem is you're absolutely right to point out the transition costs of moving towards a highly integrated economy, right? Integrated with the global economy, where trade is a relatively big part of the economy, and its importance for what is being brought in as well. In the United States, it's not that the United States doesn't make stuff. The United States has actually a large manufacturing sector. It just
That's
doesn't
right.
employ a lot of people
No,
because it's so highly mechanized. It's so highly, we got robots building stuff instead of
that's
people
right.
because
Yeah.
robots are cheaper than people.
Robots are
Like,
building the cars and the people are supervising the robots.
exactly, right? So those humans that are left in the industry, they get paid pretty well,
They do
which
get
is
paid well. The unions have
a
done a really
good
good
thing.
job.
Well, exactly, right? So, but the thing is, the United States imports a lot of the goods to make those manufactured goods. It
Yeah,
imports parts, it imports resources, and then it uses its factories to be able to turn those resources and those parts into finished products, which it then sells.
right,
Which is one of the reasons why putting tariff on Mexico and Canada was so absolutely insane. If your goal was to strengthen the American car industry,
right.
because the American car industry depends upon parts and resources coming in from Mexico and Canada. And
Yeah,
so every tariff meant increasing the price of those goods, which increased the price of the cars Americans are manufacturing. And in fact, recently, apparently, Toyota has just pulled out one of its factories that was making cars in America,
yeah.
precisely because the tariffs have bet that those cars are no longer economically viable.
Yeah, and so this is where I mean by the peak of Mount ignorance is that this is government by Dunning-Kruger, and then the other half of this though is that this is a real world effect, right? And people can't ignore about what's either about to happen and what
Yep.
happened during Brexit here. I mean, there is food shortages here in certain areas like lettuce,
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah.
and which is weird to
You
think
wanted a
about. Like,
salad? Brexit said, ah, no
well,
salad for you.
exactly. But then you flip it around, and
Hmm.
I think there is a certain level of Dunning-Krugerness here, not 100%, but in the same things that are going on with due process. But this is, I
Hmm.
feel, because to argue what they're arguing is the
Hmm.
height of ignorance, which I believe is, I don't think it's ignorance. I think they're just putting on a show to try to get rid of rights for people. But I
Hmm.
mean, they just arrested that judge.
Yes, that's right. A judge in Wisconsin, I believe, was arrested by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. They claim that when ICE had gone into her courthouse to basically detain an undocumented immigrant who was, I think he was in court because he was facing 3 counts of misdemeanor battery.
Yeah.
Which, for the record, to those of you wondering what misdemeanor battery could be, basically it's when you make physical contact with someone and they didn't want you to do that.
That's a touch in the face. That's a touch in the
Well,
arm.
well, that's the thing. That could be anything from like bumping someone on the street, basically,
Yeah.
to shoving someone, to a slap in the face, to like just being like, "Oh, can I touch your hair?" and then touching people's fucking hair. So like that kind of shit could all fall within battery because you're touching people and they didn't want you to do it.
Yeah.
Keep your hands to yourself. That's not legal advice, but it
It's just
really should
common
be.
sense. It's just
It
common
exactly,
sense. It's not legal advice,
exactly.
but common sense. But this
Yeah.
lady, this judge was arrested, perp walked out of her
Mhm.
court. And the reason I'm trying to draw a parallel here is because with the trade stuff, everyone can see it, but with the due process stuff, the argument there
Mhm.
I don't think that the people making the argument are in the same way as dumb as the people making the tariff arguments. I think that, if you are buying into
Mhm.
the due process only applies to, the people who support Trump, right?
Mhm.
You are climbing on ignorance. You probably haven't read anything. And the people who
Mhm.
are coming up with these legal arguments, that if you're not under the jurisdiction of America when you came into America, then you can be
Ah,
kicked out.
yes.
Yeah, that's another
Yeah.
like Mount ignorance,
That is
comment.
that is very much a Mount Ignorance comment. That's exactly the kind of, like, when people, when people write lawyers, right? When writers who create TV series, when they create movies and whatnot, when they one of their characters are lawyers, they'll often portray lawyers as people who are like, well, the text literally says this, but I'm going to say it means this, and you can't prove I'm wrong, so therefore.
Exactly.
And that's not how that shit works, man. Like
Yeah.
that is, yeah. Like occasionally it does come down to statutory interpretation, like what actually does the law mean here?
What does and mean there? What
Right,
does
exactly.
mean? Yeah.
Exactly. Like what is the meaning of this phrase here? And it's important to do that, right?
Yeah, of course.
Um, and so the legal argument that the Trump administration appears to be making with the Enemy Aliens Acts, where they say, well, we're saying that the presence of Tren de Aragua in the United States is an invasion
Right.
because we've been using the term invasion for
Decade.
people coming and claiming asylum for frick's sake. Yeah, that because they've been using this phrase invasion, then that means that it's an invasion according to the law, and that means that they can, lock people up without a judge and throw them into a torture prison forever in El Salvador.
Yeah.
This is absolutely not how law works
No.
because, yeah, like you don't just get to, it's not Calvin Ball. You don't just get to make up your own rules as you go along,
No,
basically.
no, absolutely not. And I mean, these are the same people putting kids on trial now, in like two,
Ah,
3-year-old
yes.
kids on
Yeah.
trial. Which, if you don't know, we'll post links in the link. Of Patrick, if you could send those links to me,
Oh,
if you
yeah,
can
yeah.
find them, because again, uh, I think at the very top of this chain here, I don't
Hmm.
think that these people are on the Dunning-Kruger, scale. I think they're on the fascist scale. But the people underneath them, I fully believe, have climbed the top of Mount Ignorance and say, yeah, this all makes sense. And I don't understand why the judges are opposing us. These activist judges who are saying that,
Yeah,
the words that we're using are just garbage and that, we can just arrest whoever we want, throw them wherever we feel like throwing them, and you can't
yeah,
do anything about that because that's how America works. Because we should follow the president in wherever he wants us to go. Oh, this is off
exactly.
top. This is completely off topic, and we're gonna have to end in a few minutes. But have you heard about these Trump freaking gold lapel pins that people are wearing now?
No, what
With
is
Trump's
this?
head, no, it's with Trump's head on it. It's like the North Korean freaking flag pins, right?
Oh.
And I was people are they've been wearing them and they've been caught on like camera wearing them a couple of times. But
Mm, mm,
like
mm,
like
mm.
the
Yeah, cult of personality. That's definitely not that's beating the charges, no doubt.
Exactly. So that's another way that we're climbing the Mount of Ignorance with this government and with previous but governments kind of, in the UK as well with Brexit. And then
Yeah.
finally, the peak of Mount Ignorance, I believe, is Pete
Mm.
Hegseth.
Ah.
Pete
Secretary
Hegseth.
Hegseth.
I'm
Uh
sorry, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. American Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Great guy. Excellent
mm.
tattoos all over his body.
Oh yeah, tons of
Um,
tattoos. Not disturbing at all to see Crusader crosses inked over a man's pectoral muscle. That doesn't make me think that
always a
this is a
sign
man
that
who
this
intends evil, you
always a
know.
sign that guy's got to he's got good decision making qualities.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so since we last talked about this, which I think it was like episode 2 or 3 or something, because it happened very quickly.
Yep.
No, maybe, I think it was the outdoor episode. Pete has been caught up in not one, but maybe potentially two more Signal Gate. Um, Catastrophe is not the right word. Controversy is the right word, but it is
I
also a
mean, from
catastrophe.
the standpoint of national security, Chris, I would argue catastrophe works pretty well. You know,
Yeah,
it's oh my God. So, okay, he has been conducting government business on a deeply unsecured app, which is bad. He has been sharing national security secrets with his wife, which is bad. He has been, and what's the most recent thing? What is this now that he has done?
I'm hearing rumor
Hmm.
that his phone. Yeah, I'm hearing rumor from Germany here that his phone number has been found on two Russian spies. But it's all a story. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's still coming in today. And I only heard about it just before we went off. We started hitting
Now,
before we
okay,
hit
now
record.
to be fair, Chris, to be fair and balanced and frallanced, um,
We are
I
always frallanced.
may exactly. We are always frallanced here on Doctors Not Doctors. Maybe the reason why those Russian spies have got his number is because they got it from Kirsty Noem's purse.
Oh well, yeah, because let's not
Because
forget that
yeah,
the director of Homeland Security, the Secretary
Director of Homeland Security.
had her purse stolen and like a Rolex in it,
Yep,
at like 3 grand as well. I think it's
yep.
like 3 grand in the purse.
Because
'Cause that's
who doesn't walk around with 3 grand in
what
your
top
purse,
level government
Chris?
official doesn't
Like,
walking around
yeah.
with like 3 grand walking around money. She's got somebody
Look,
will be driving her around. Why does she need $3,000
well,
in
look. Okay,
cash?
Chris. You know how sometimes you get paid, and you don't have time to get to the bank, right? So if she's sometimes the bribe money you can't get it into the bank immediately. You can't get it to the local money launderer. You got to keep it on you. You
Well,
got to keep it
maybe
on you,
maybe
Chris.
she's just
So
maybe she knew that this power cut was coming in the Iberian Peninsula, and she's now spooked, and she
maybe
knew it
that's
was
it.
because
You're right.
she
And
was
now she
director of
doesn't trust the
Homeland
banks.
Security. She's the head of
exactly.
Homeland Security. So
You're right.
she has all this information. She's got all this, these plans and precursors to what's happened. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's wild though and this is what I mean by the peak of Dunning-Kruger with Hegseth though. Um,
Mhm.
Everyone and their mom, even Dr. Armshaw and Dr. Silverstein, we both understand
Ooh.
that you don't use Signal for personal communication. There was another one that just popped in my head. Apparently, he
Yep.
had a private internet line put
Mhm.
into the Pentagon so he could
Oh,
use
yes, that's
Signal.
right. He also did that. He had specifically had an unsecured line put into the Pentagon so he could use Signal in the office.
So I think,
Just
yeah,
chef's kiss.
he's the definition of top of Mount Ignorance, the peak of Mount Ignorance. I mean, he went from being a Fox News host,
Yeah.
which is, they give you they're the Sherpas for
Yeah.
Mount Ignorance,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
They've
he
got the base camp set up.
They do have the base camp set up, and they want you there. As soon as you
Yep.
turn it on, and you have no critical vision on, you're there, and
Exactly.
just everything that he's done is like when you think about it, that is the government by Dunning-Kruger, where you
Yeah.
believe that everyone else has got it wrong. I'm the guy who's gonna get it right, even
Experts
though
don't know anything.
don't listen to the experts. The professors are the enemy, Richard
Yep.
Nixon,
Oh, yeah.
and that and we're gonna sort it out, doing it with less work and less expertise.
Yeah.
That's what they're
Exactly.
saying, which
I
is
mean, to be
crazy.
to be fair, fascism and this is a obvious non sequitur, but fascism is sort of notorious for its anti-intellectualism, specifically, I think,
Yeah,
as a defense mechanism,
yeah,
because fascism makes no sense.
no,
Like the claims that it tends to make tend to be complete gibberish when you really start trying to like drill into them, when you start trying to understand them. That's why there's no single fascist ideology.
yeah,
It's not like it can't be analyzed in the same way that communism can. And so, whereas with like radical left wingers, you will find splits among splits among splits, as various factions are all like, no, but see, the true path to communism is, set out in Das Kapital. But no, the true path to communism is explained by Lenin with his discussion of imperialism. And
yeah.
for the fascists, just like the true path to fascism is shut up and I will murder you now.
Do
So,
what I
like,
say. I will tell you what you think.
exactly, exactly. Doing is better than thinking,
Yes.
for fascism, because if you stop and think, you're going to stop being a fascist. So,
And that's our brief discussion of the
yeah,
Dunning-Kruger effect. I will end with
I think we
this.
did that. We nailed that. We did so well with that. And I know that because I know so little about podcasting.
Yes, and I will end
Yeah.
with this. When I first described the Dunning-Kruger effect, I drew the peak of Mount Ignorance, and then I drew
Mhm.
the valley, and I didn't draw anything else because I didn't
Oh,
know,
no.
because I was in the middle of the Dunning-Kruger effect for the Dunning-Kruger effect. Um,
I am so sorry to hear that. But I'm glad that you've crawled your way out the other side to the plateau of
uh,
okayness.
of okayness. Yeah. Last
Yeah.
thing we're going to talk about, though, it was a special request from Dr. Armshaw. There's been some polling out about the dear leader.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems that the United States populace is slightly less jazzed about everything that's been going on. So I'm
Nonplussed,
going
if you will.
to, yeah, no,
Nonplussed.
indeed, indeed. Their pluses have all gone non
Yes.
at this point. So, for those of you who are familiar with the folk ways of American presidencies, you'll understand that the first 100 days are usually referred to as the honeymoon period. This is when the president, having been elected, enjoys a period of popularity that he's basically never going to get again.
Yes.
Because for the first 100 days, the president will start doing things that he was elected to do. He will have the most power, having just been elected.
Yeah.
And the midterm elections is still far away. Everyone can say, oh, well, this president is very popular. We should do what he says. We don't want the voters to punish us for disobeying him in the next election. So this is really like where it all comes together. For Donald Trump, his honeymoon has gone slightly differently. He is now the least popular president at this period in his honeymoon in recorded history.
In recorded history.
Yeah, going back at least to Eisenhower, but I think the reason why we stop at Eisenhower is because we don't really have polling on Truman and previously. So to give you a sense of where things are at the moment, There are four polls that came out. I'll talk about them very briefly. Fox News has the president at 44% favorable, 55% unfavorable for a
Ooh,
minus 11.
-11.
That's as good as it gets.
Ooh, wow. That
New
was
York
Fox
Times
News. That
CNN.
was Fox
That was
News.
Fox News. Fox News. Now, Fox News, for the record, it tends to be slightly more favorable to Trump, but it's also not against. It's not unreasonable. They generally tend to have a very good polling outfit. So they are to be understood as being well within the realm of the possible. Like this is what we're seeing.
And this is important because if their polling is seen to be just total bullshit, then
Hmm.
they'll lose. They'll naturally have to lose some of their more moderate viewers,
Well, that's the
who
thing, right?
who will look outside and be like, that is not what I feel. Why are you telling me his approval rate is 85%? When I know that
Yeah,
everybody thinks that he's a shitbag, right?
but that's the thing. Fox News, they've got a relatively good polling outfit, and their polling is not good for Mr. Trump at all. But it's as good as it gets for Mr. Trump because New York Times Siena came out with a poll just 2 days ago, I think, and they had him at 42% favorable, 54% unfavorable
54.
for, yep, for a minus 12. The Washington Post and ABC had a poll that had Donald Trump's favorability at 39% for a minus 16 altogether.
Wow.
And APC NORC, again, 39% with a 59% unfavorable,
Ooh,
20 points down.
wow.
Now, any individual poll should not be taken as gospel because
No,
polling
no.
is not a science. It is barely an art, but we do our best, right?
Just snapshot.
But the thing is, if you get four polls all coming out at the same time and all telling the same story, and that story is all, yeah, people are not happy with what's happening. Donald Trump has lost his approval on the job that he's doing on immigration, which was still his strongest suit, but now he's underwater on immigration. He's
Yeah.
underwater on uh, pretty much everything. And specifically, when asked about whether or not he should follow the rulings by the courts, supermajorities of over 70% of Americans say he absolutely should.
There was an interesting thing I saw in one of the polls that he still was ranking very high. It was still under 50%, but I think it was
Mm-hmm.
47 or 49% in
Mm-hmm.
favor of his handling of immigration. But then when you specifically brought up Abrego Garcia,
Oh,
it
yes.
went down to 37 or 38%. So it's
Yes.
very much that people might be climbing the mountain of ignorance as well, but they're definitely starting to come back down because they're getting the other half,
Well,
right?
Donald Trump has shoved him off the peak.
In
He's forced them to learn more about what it
Yeah,
is that he is doing, and
well,
as they've done that, yeah,
it's not learning more, they're feeling it. It's that, if you're going to go to the shops in a few weeks in America and there's nothing that on the shelf, or there's very few items on the shelves, that's a result of your vote if you voted
well,
for Trump. If your
Chris, as
farm
it
is,
happens,
yeah.
sometimes facts do care about your feelings.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah,
Yeah.
Trump is I mean, if this is supposed to be the high watermark.
Yeah, this is I don't see how he regains popularity in any kind of strong way. He was never very popular in his first term. He started off below 50%. I don't think he ever cracked 50% in his first term.
Yeah,
He never sank to massive unpopularity, but he was definitely in the low 40s, possibly high 30s at the end of his first term.
yeah,
But it took a long time and a global pandemic to
yeah,
do that to him.
yeah,
This time,
definitely.
100 days, he's dropped down to the low 40s and he's done it all himself.
100% himself and his
Yep.
Dunning-Kruger government, who have, apparently not cared about, the American people, and just decided to,
Yeah.
focus up on creating the disaster society that they want to rule.
Well, Chris, they've done their own research. So
Well,
there you go.
indeed, they've done their own research, and with that, I think we're going to call it there.
Yep.
Um, it's been an interesting episode, and we might keep these a little bit longer because we have a little bit waffling at the beginning, but
Well,
um,
we'll see. Well, give us a comment in the down there part. Tell us whether or not you like the waffling. Are you pro waffle? Are you anti waffle?
are
Do
you
you
for the
occasionally want to see a pancake?
of
Let us know.
international houses and waffle houses? We got them all, and
Exactly.
we're working on the
Exactly.
sound issue as well, so hopefully the
Mhm.
sound will be better from this point forward. Um,
In
But
in the meantime.
In the
Thanks for
meantime,
joining us.
yeah. And as always, I'm Dr. Silverstein,
I'm Dr. Armshaw,
and we are doctors.
not doctors.
Good night.